Hi, I'm Jaden Kaufman, and I'm here with Wayland Sports Broadcasting, and I'd like to welcome Coach Gary Chase to the studio today. Coach Chase, how was your life like growing up?
It was kind of an idyllic situation. I grew up in North Wayland on Gleason Lane. Our neighborhood was a post-war baby boom neighborhood, and we probably had about 25 kids at our local bus stop.
Oh, wow.
And our main entertainment was sports. We as a neighborhood played every sport there was. In the springtime, we had baseball. The baseball field was in my backyard. In the fall, we played football. The football field was in the Conley's backyard. In the winter, we played hockey. We had a number of ponds that we could skate on. And the Mahers had a hockey rink that they used to put in over their tennis court. And then we used to run a lot of track and field. We had a triangle that's an intersection of Gleason Lane and Training Field Road, and it was 5 laps to the 5 laps to the mile around the triangle. And every spring we would hold the neighborhood Olympics.
Ooh.
And we had quite the neighborhood of athletes. The Hanlons, there were 5 Hanlons. They all ran track. There was 6 Mahers, and they played hockey and football. And there were 6 Conleys, and the girls and boys, and they were soccer and hockey players. And the Chases, we were football and wrestlers. Yeah. So there was no, it was all sports. That's all we did. There was no social media. There was no games. Yeah. It was, we ran, we jumped, we skated, and it was great. And interesting enough, I grew up right next to the largest dairy farm in New England. It was the Watertown Dairy. And they had a couple hundred head of cows there that they would milk. And it was actually my first job when I was 12 years old, was baling hay and packing corn at 90 cents an hour for the Watertown Dairy. So we all grew up in a neighborhood where the neighborhood grew you up. Yeah. It was great. It was a great experience.
So I see sports was a big part of your childhood. Is that what got you into football, I'm guessing?
Well, yeah. I mean, I did play Pop Warner football, but unfortunately, at that time, in the early 60s, the Pop Warner practice was all the way over in Cochituate. Oh. And my parents only had one car, like a lot of the families back then, and I couldn't always get to practice. So I did play Pop Warner football, but it wasn't that big of an influence on me because there was a lot of times I just didn't get there.
Yeah. What made you get into wrestling? You said you guys used to play hockey in the winter.
Yeah, well, that's a fun story, and it's a story I've told numerous times. I signed up for freshman football along with 75 other freshmen. And there were so many of us, Ralph Salvati, the athletic director, had to go down into the bowels of the field house and get all the old football equipment that was stored away, never to be used again. And because they didn't have enough helmet for the freshman team. And the helmet that I had actually was so old, when this helmet was new, it did not have a face bar on it. So the face bar was screwed in after the fact. It was just a little fiberglass face bar that came out front. And I wasn't one of the bigger kids, so I ended up last in line to get a helmet. I went over, I picked up a helmet, I put it on. And I went over to Coach Moyer, who was the freshman football coach, the wrestling coach. And I said, "Hey, Coach, does this helmet fit?" And he takes it, and he goes like this, and he goes like this. And I literally was looking out the ear hole. And he goes like this, he puts it back, and he goes, "Tighten up that chin strap." So I put the chin strap on, and then he grabs the face mask, he pulls me in close, and he says, "Are you a wrestler?" And I said, "No, Coach, I'm going to play hockey." He says, "No, you're not. You're wrestling." And he threw me back. That's how I went out for wrestling. I had never even heard of it.
Sounds fun.
So I went out for wrestling.
What was high school like for you?
It was a wonderful experience. I mean, Wayland High School has always been a great high school. One of the things I remember about it in 1968 when I was a freshman, the high school was only 8 years old, and they treated it like it was brand new. And I still remember you weren't allowed to walk on the grass. And during in between classes, the teachers would all have to go out into the hallways, out into the courtyard, and make sure nobody walked on the grass. The grass was all freshly cut, mowed, watered, and bright green. Wow. There was no cutting across the grass. It was a beautiful campus. But it was a good experience. We had great teachers. I was not the best student, but I think I put all my effort into sports.
Speaking of high school sports, how was your high school football career like?
Again, I had the privilege of having two of the best coaches that any young person could ever want. Coach Pete Sullivan was my varsity football coach, and Rick Moyer was my wrestling coach. But funny enough, my freshman year of football, I never even got on the field. There were 75 kids, and I was kind of small and scrawny. And I think I got in a couple plays the fourth game of the year. Interesting enough, 4 years later, the two captains of the undefeated football team, myself and a good friend of mine, Dave Stillman, neither one of us got to play freshman football. We were bench riders.
Oh, wow.
But by our senior years, we were captains of the team, along with Dave Harmon. But football was a great experience. At the time, Wayland was a local powerhouse, and we had one of the best teams ever play football in Wayland in the 1971 season, the 1972 class. Our senior year, we were undefeated. We scored 229 points and had 12 points scored against us.
Wow.
And we had an All-American running back, and we had a ferocious line that was made up of wrestlers. And nobody weighed over 205 pounds. And we just steamrolled everyone we played. Running back, Max, had the honor of meeting him, Bob Peck. He was a high school All-American, and he rushed for 1,500 yards, which he broke the record. Max did. But he never, Bob Peck never got to play in the third quarter.
Oh, really?
Because we were always winning 28-0 by the third quarter.
Makes sense.
So he would get to play the first series. He would come in the third quarter, play for the first series, and that would be about it. So he was averaging about 200 yards a game.
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
And but so it was a lot of fun. We dominated, and it was a great experience.
Yeah. What was high school wrestling like for you?
Well, again, at the same time, Coach Moyer came to Wayland in 1968. The 68, it was not 67-68, excuse me, 67-68. David McGill, who was a junior at the time, loved wrestling.
Yeah.
And if you go to the wall, you'll see David McGill's. He's the first picture on the wall. What makes him important was his father, Dr. McGill, was the superintendent of schools. And his son liked wrestling.
Yeah.
So he got a hold of Buzz Bowers, and he says, Buzz, find me the best coach you can find in wrestling and get him here. So Buzz Bowers called Doug Parker at Springfield and says, Coach Parker, I've been told to hire the best wrestling coach I can find. You have anybody in mind? He says, yes, I know one of my former wrestlers. He's down in New York. He's coaching a powerhouse team, but he doesn't like Long Island.
Yeah.
And I bet you he'd love to come to Wayland. And sure enough, Wayland got a hold of him, and he says, I'd love to move to Wayland. And he moved up and took the job in 67-68. So he created Wayland Wrestling.
Yeah.
Wayland Wrestling was started as a JV sport in 1967 by Norm Walker. Norm Walker was a English teacher and football coach here. Very intellectual person, graduated from Williams and Harvard University. And he knew the benefit of wrestling. He knew nothing about wrestling, so he started a team. And some of the older wrestlers that I had met and talked with at the time, Coach Walker would he had a book, and he would make the kids run 5 miles.
Oh, wow.
And when you're done, he'd open up the book, and they would practice moves right out of the books. So we all consider Coach Moyer the first wrestling coach.
Yeah.
Because he was the first wrestling coach, but Norm Walker actually started the program. And it was Superintendent McGill that put it together by saying, find me the coach.
Yeah. Which sport would you say you had more fun playing while growing up?
That's a great question, but everyone loves football.
Yeah.
Football is a great sport to play. It's a lot of fun. I loved practice. I mean, I couldn't wait every day to go up and practice football.
Yeah.
and I loved it. It was a great experience. And wrestling was just a lot harder, as you know. But it's more rewarding.
Yeah.
So to answer it fairly, they both have left a mark on me as a person, and I love them both, and I can't say which one I love better.
Fair enough. During your high school career, did you ever face any like injuries or anything? If so, how did you like get over them and keep just pushing forward?
I never got injured.
Oh wow.
I had things hurt,
Yeah.
you know, and usually I just tape them up. But I never had any. I always trained, and I was always running. I was always lifting. I was always doing what you would consider CrossFit.
Yeah.
You know, I'd swim across ponds. I would, you know, carry things on my back. I was in pretty good shape, and I had very good flexibility, which I have none of now. But I never got injured, other than
Just
you
little
know
things.
sprains and you know things that hurt.
Yeah.
And when something hurt, I just tape it up.
Fair enough. What made you decide to come back to Wayland after graduating and coach?
Well, that's a great story. Another story I've told numerous times. I got married young, had kids young, and it was in 1984. I was working for the town, and I got a phone call from Rick Moyer. And I was 30 years old at the time, and he calls me up at home. He says, "Gary, Coach Moyer." I said, "Hey, Coach Mo, how you doing?" And he says, "I got something I want you to do for me." I said, "Okay." He says, "Lincoln Sudbury needs a coach. I want you to go over there, talk to Andy Oleski, and tell him you're going to be their new coach." I says, "What?" I had never coached anything other than youth sports.
Yeah.
I volunteered for all other kinds of things in youth sports, but never coached wrestling. What happened was Lincoln Sudbury, their program was in turmoil. They fired their coaches. What happened was they took the kids to a wrestling camp and ended up going out on a Friday night and getting drunk. And,
Oh wow.
and they got in trouble. They got fired.
Yeah.
They had no coach. And so Andy Oleski called Rick Moyer and says, "Can you find me a coach?" And so I contacted Andy Oleski, and he says, "You're hired." So I took a team that was 0-11, and my first year we went 9-5-1. So
That's a big
I was hooked.
turnaround.
I was hooked at that time.
Obviously, I've heard the story, and many people have. But what is the history behind the wall in the wrestling room? You mentioned it earlier. There's a bunch of photos when you walk
Yeah,
in. One of
it
the
was-
first things you see.
Well, the wall started back in 1968, and I have some pictures at home, and the wall started out as statistics.
Yeah.
You know, there would be a list of all the wrestlers, who has the most pins, who has the most wins, you know, who won this, who won that. So there was no wall to start with.
Yeah.
So the wall started out with statistics,
Yeah.
who was doing what, and in 4 years of wrestling, my first 4 years of wrestling, we never lost a match until the next to last match of my senior year,
Oh wow.
and it was to Lowell.
Yeah.
But we came back and we beat them in the States and in New England, so we just fluffed that under the rug.
Didn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
Another famous wrestling story, but the walkout song "Fire."
Yeah.
What is that? How'd that all start?
Well, that happened. It would have been the early season of 1969. David Lipton, Dave Harmon, captain of the team. They went up to Coach Moore and said, "We'd like to warm up to music."
Yeah.
And no one warmed up to music. It just
Yeah.
wasn't done. And they said, "You guys are goofy." They talked him into it. He says, "Well, if you want to set it up, go ahead." So they brought in their own stereo. They brought in some big speakers. And at the time, Jimi Hendrix was at the height of his popularity.
Yeah.
And it was probably about a year before he passed away from a drug overdose. And we warmed up to Fire. We came roaring out to Fire, and at the time, the first match of the season was always against Springfield Tech and Springfield Cathedral, and they were a big rivalry. They
Yeah.
had strong teams back then, and we came out and we kicked butt in both matches. And after that, Moyer said, "Hey, that was great. We can warm up to Fire."
Guess you got to keep it now.
So that's been the only it's been the only song Wayland's have warmed up to for 23, 24 years.
Oh wow.
No, 25.
Yeah.
54, 53 years, right around there.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Obviously, your family's big into wrestling
Yeah.
with your son and grandson who's in my
Yeah.
grade. But what does wrestling mean to your family?
Wrestling was what we do in the winter. I mean, I've never skied. Sean, he's tried skiing. My daughter she's now entrenched in a ski family. But wrestling is what we do in the winter, and it's always been part of who we are. It's a great sport. Takes a lot of commitment, and once it gets under your skin, it stays there.
Yeah. What does it feel like to you to have your son and grandson and even granddaughter in the Wayland wrestling environment?
Well, it means everything. I mean, Whalen wrestling, means a lot to me. It's kind of the reason you can't get rid of me. I'm the hang around guy,
Yeah.
But it brings me back to my youth. It brings me a lot of good feelings, a lot of good memories, and I think that my sons have been able to experience those same type of memories.
Yeah.
It's not really about winning and losing. It's about learning how to win, learning how to lose, learning how to get back up when you get knocked down, and more importantly, you learn that if you work really hard, you will succeed.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest lessons, I'm now retired, but what success I've had in my career, it all came from one simple reason. I always outworked my competition. Yeah. And it was a lesson I learned in football and wrestling. Just you take a job, take it seriously, and work hard at it, and work harder than the guy next to you. And if you do that, you'll succeed. And I think that's the lesson that wrestling teaches.
Continuing with the family trend, Coach Chase, your son, just recently won his 300th match.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Oh, that's just tremendous. I mean, he's done a great job with the program. He's won 2 outright state championships. He's won a couple of dual meet state championships, a number of sectional championships. He's coached some great wrestlers, and he's catching up. He far surpassed me in wins, and he's catching up to Coach Moyer.
Oh,
and
wow.
He'll be in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame in a short time.
Yeah,
he's working his
you are
way
too,
there.
aren't you?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Both that and the Wayland Hall of Fame, right?
I'm in 3.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
What's the third one?
The Massachusetts Coaches Association Wrestling Hall of Fame, the High School Hall of Fame, and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame.
I see. Well, as a wrestler myself, we're currently halfway through, or around a little more halfway through the season.
Yeah, that's right.
How do you think the season's going so far?
The season's going well. I mean, we've taken our lumps along the way. We've had a real tough schedule, but I think the schedule we have is going to make us be a much stronger team in the end. And that's when you want to peak. You want to peak in the end. You have a soft schedule, it's not going to help you in the end. So I'm looking forward to the sectionals and seeing all you guys develop as wrestlers.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming. We have an important match tonight, so
Yeah,
hopefully we
it'll
can
be fun.
come away with the win.
All right.
Thank you so much for coming.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Yeah.